In May 2019, a royal baby was born. But instead of unity, Archie's paperwork raised more questions than answers. Why did Harry register the birth alone 11 days later? Why was Meghan's name erased from the certificate? The palace and Meghan gave opposite explanations, and neither side has clarified since. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. Because in monarchy, details aren't trivial, they're survival. And this single document revealed just how fragile that survival has become. To understand why a line on a birth certificate sparked such debate, we need context. Prince Harry, long cast as the spare, brought both nostalgia and tension into royal life. Meghan Markle, an American actress and divorcée, was an outsider by every royal measure. Their marriage in 2018 symbolized both modernity and fracture, diversity and progress for some, intrusion and disruption for others. Archie's birth in May 2019 should have been healing, a new chapter uniting tradition with modern life. But royal births aren't just private family milestones, they are state events. The paperwork, announcements, and titles attached to each newborn carry centuries of symbolism about legitimacy and continuity. Historically, every detail has been carefully managed, not just for bureaucracy, but for perception. So when Archie's paperwork began to deviate from precedent, delays in registration, name changes, contradictions between Meghan and palace sources, it wasn't dismissed as clerical error. For many, it was the first glimpse of a deeper battle. Who had the authority to define Meghan and Harry's legacy? The couple themselves, or the institution they had married into? The first unusual step came with timing. Royal births are traditionally registered swiftly. William and Catherine registered Prince George within days in 2013, appearing together, presenting a united family image. With Archie, things unfolded differently. Harry registered the birth alone, 11 days after the event. Meghan was absent. Was it recovery, privacy, or something else? The delay prompted quiet questions. Then came the amendment. Initially, Archie's birth certificate listed Meghan's full legal name, Rachel Meghan Markle. But within months, the document was altered. Her personal name disappeared. In its place stood titles only: Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Even under profession, the entry read, Princess of the United Kingdom. Why change something so basic? Meghan later stated the palace forced her hand, erasing her given name to diminish her role. Palace insiders countered with the opposite, that Meghan requested it, aligning herself more closely with tradition. The truth remains contested, but the contradiction itself is telling. Because this was not an isolated anomaly, it fit a pattern. Titles for Archie became another battleground. Unlike cousins George, Charlotte, and Louis, Archie did not receive a prince title at birth. The Sussexes argued he was denied protection and recognition. The palace explained it was protocol, not prejudice, that titles for grandchildren of the sovereign only come automatically when the monarch ascends. Looking back, these events reveal consistency. Disputes over paperwork, titles, and names weren't administrative quirks. They exposed a wider struggle between two forces. Meghan and Harry insisted on individual identity, privacy, and autonomy. The palace insisted on institutional framing, where roles, not personal names, defined legitimacy. And every time the couple resisted, even over paperwork, it deepened the sense that this was not simply a new royal family adapting, it was an institution under strain, facing a challenge to its very rules. To see why Archie's paperwork mattered so much, consider precedent. Royal births have long been choreographed as carefully as coronations. When Queen Elizabeth gave birth to Charles in 1948, ministers were expected, until that very year, to witness the delivery, ensuring legitimacy. That tradition was finally abandoned, but the principle remained. Royal births were not merely private, but matters of state. By the 1980s, Diana's sons were born at St. Mary's Hospital, photographed for the world, with birth certificates swiftly signed. When William and Catherine welcomed George in 2013, both parents registered the birth together, smiling for cameras. These moments reinforced a pattern, the monarchy presenting itself as stable, transparent, and above suspicion. Archie's case broke that rhythm. 11 days passed before paperwork was signed. Meghan's absence fueled whispers of distance or disagreement, and the later amendment amplified them. No other modern royal mother had her given names erased in this way. It felt symbolic, whether intentional or not, of Meghan being subsumed by title, her individuality erased. Royal biographer Ingrid Seward noted that the amendment seemed unnecessary. almost provocative, while others like Omid Scobie suggested it reflected a larger institutional coldness toward Meghan. The debate wasn't just about names. It became a proxy for whether Meghan was embraced or marginalized by the institution. Context deepens the story. These events occurred as tensions escalated between the Sussexes and the press. Meghan was already suing tabloids for privacy invasion. Harry's frustration with the firm was building. By early 2020, they would announce their exit from royal duties altogether. Seen in hindsight, Archie's paperwork was less a clerical story and more a warning shot. Consider what this revealed. Names and titles aren't decoration in monarchy. They are instruments of legitimacy. To alter or contest them is to question who holds power to define identity. Was Meghan a wife and mother first, or a duchess whose individuality dissolved into the institution? Was Archie a child first, or primarily a royal heir whose paperwork had to match protocol? These questions, embedded in one piece of paper, became flashpoints for the broader conflict tearing the family apart. The amendment story broke publicly in January 2021, nearly 2 years after Archie's birth. By then, the Sussexes were already in California, distancing themselves from the institution. The timing mattered. The revelation fueled polarized narratives. For critics of Meghan, it became evidence she was attempting to erase herself for branding purposes, aligning with Duchess for commercial gain. For supporters, it symbolized her erasure by the palace, proof she had been stripped of her own name in service of tradition. The palace notably refused to clarify definitively, leaving both interpretations alive. This ambiguity carried weight. In monarchy, perception often outweighs truth. Silence itself is a strategy, allowing narratives to swirl without official contradiction, but ensuring the institution avoids legal entanglement. Meghan, meanwhile, seized the ambiguity. In interviews, she framed the certificate issue as part of a broader silencing, her lack of agency within palace walls. The implications rippled outward. If Meghan's own name could vanish from her son's birth certificate, what else could be controlled or altered? The story became emblematic of a struggle for narrative power, and it foreshadowed what was to come. The Oprah interview in March 2021, Netflix documentaries, Harry's memoir Spare, each represented attempts to reclaim narrative agency, countering palace silence with personal testimony. Royal historian Robert Lacey observed that the certificate amendment became part of a tapestry of perceived slights, feeding the Sussex conviction that they were not respected as individuals. For Harry, long sensitive about institutional control after Diana's death, this episode reinforced a belief that history was repeating. Thus, a minor document became symbolic. It was less about names on a page than about authority, who defines the Sussex story, and whose version becomes history. That contest, once exposed, could never be fully contained. Today, Archie and his sister Lilibet are being raised in California, outside the structures that once defined royal childhoods. They are not daily fixtures on palace calendars. Their schooling, friends, and upbringing unfold far from Windsor or Buckingham Palace. But the paperwork dispute lingers as emblematic of a wider rupture. The monarchy, for centuries, thrived on clarity. Titles, ceremonies, and documents reinforced order. Inconsistencies or disputes were dangerous because they invited speculation, and speculation undermines legitimacy. In Archie's case, ambiguity around paperwork and titles has fueled years of whispers, leaving the monarchy unable or unwilling to settle the record. For the Sussexes, that ambiguity has been reframed into evidence. It supports their narrative of marginalization and lack of control. And in modern media, perception can outweigh precedent. The institution's silence, once a shield, increasingly looks like avoidance. Looking forward, the question is less about one document and more about the precedent it set. Archie and Lilibet's future roles remain uncertain. Without formal integration, their legitimacy within royal structures will always carry an asterisk. For the monarchy, that asterisk is dangerous because legitimacy is its currency. For Meghan and Harry, it becomes leverage, the ability to frame their children's story on their terms, not the institution's. So what did Archie's birth certificate really reveal? Not a clerical mistake, nor a conspiracy, but a clash of two truths. For the monarchy, identity is institutional, defined by titles, roles, and carefully managed perception. For Meghan and Harry, identity is personal, rooted in autonomy and individual dignity. When those two truths collided, even a piece of paper became contested ground. And that, perhaps, is the lesson. Monarchies don't collapse through sudden rebellions alone. Sometimes they fracture through quiet contradictions, erasures, and silences. A name missing here, a title withheld there. To outsiders, it may seem trivial, but to those watching closely, these details signal the deeper question: who truly controls the royal narrative? Archie's birth certificate may one day be just an archival record, but today it remains a symbol of identity contested, of institutions under strain, and of the ongoing battle to define royal truth in the modern age.